So a couple things. One, the mainstream even now doesn't hear R&B to react to it. Right now, if we want to talk about a part of R&B that people are reacting to, we of course have the right man here, right? Because for those of you who don't know who Jim is, he's the one who the tape got sent to, like as in the R. Kelly, as in the original R. Kelly tape. It showed up in his mailbox.
Have you heard I Admit?
Yes. No, actually, I haven't. I refuse to listen to it.
Jim DeRogatis or whatever your name is.
Oh, he called you out.
You've been calling me for 25 years now. Yeah, I got a whole fucking verse. I got a whole verse. I got no career except for him, he says.
He called you out.
Yeah, boy, was that an interesting morning. You wake up and there's 150 Twitter things at 6 a.m. Hey, D-Ro, R. Kelly's dissing you by name.
But that also speaks to the point that we're making. I think if R. Kelly was a rap artist, or if R. Kelly was a mainstream pop artist, folks would deal very differently with who R. Kelly is, right? Because it's R&B, and the audience is seen as primarily black women, it has not warranted the kind of attention, really until now, that it's deserved for 20 years.
But yeah, I think, I mean, I'm a huge neo-soul fan. Whether you're talking Jill Scott or Erykah Badu or D'Angelo, my God, right? But it doesn't frighten. If our theme is fear of a black planet, I don't think that neo-soul has frightened white America the way that hip hop has, and R&B is either ignored.
Especially in the early days when it's rhythm and blues and very highly sexualized, right? And the thing about R. Kelly is like a multinational corporation. Like you find
on the 73rd floor of Trump Tower across the street.
But it's
but he keeps the girls in his cult by Union Park.
It's like you find one brand that you hate and you rail against politically, not knowing that brand's owned by some other brand that you consume all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So you're like, I don't listen to R. Kelly music, but you just listen to 10 R. Kelly songs that he wrote for somebody else.
Yeah. Celine Dion.
That you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't shop at Walmart.
Usher, Celine Dion, Joe. I mean, you've been listening to all this music, right? That he wrote, right? So
that's fear of a black.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
We got to take that on the road.
That's
you and me and Tarana Burke.
Well, because Jim had this quote about, had it been one white woman in Winetta.
But I stole that from you.
Right, which he attributed to me. So in every story they interviewed Jim about this, I get quoted as part of that quote.
Because I'm a fat white guy. What right do I have to say that? And you're a black man, and you don't have the right to say. I'm so glad that there is now this hashtag Mute R. Kelly movement, which is black women.
Right.
Finally, because I've been writing for them for years. What they've told me. I don't know why I was this lucky. I'll tell you why, because I would listen. Nobody else.
You want to tell them your theory?
About
on who sent you the tape?
Oh yeah, I think it came via Nation of Islam. Yeah, that's the one you mean?
That's the one I mean.
Yeah, because R. Kelly's manager was Barry Hankerson, who was old school black mafia.
Who was also Aaliyah's cousin, uncle.
Was married to Gladys Knight, put Pippin on Broadway, managed Tony Braxton. I mean, this guy was juiced, right? He'd come to Chicago. He was the assistant mayor of Detroit under Coleman Young. He'd come to Chicago, have lunch with Farrakhan and dinner with Jesse Jackson, right? He had connections. And I believe he heard about this tape on the street, and he said, steer it to this guy. But I think it was the guys in the bow tie. Because the only thing, Nation of Islam will fight anybody trying to tear down the successful black man. The only cause bigger to them is disrespecting the fruit of Islam, the black women. Yeah. And I think they wanted this guy to be coming down. That's been but I don't know.
Right. And if you go back and you watch, he did a couple of videos for his Batman theme.
Yeah.
And there's one of them in which you actually see the fruit of Islam in the video doing security for him, right? So it's not implausible.
But what's horrifying is R. Kelly employs off-duty cops to do security. If we were to go right now to 219 North Justine Street, a block away from Union Park, where he is housing a 19-year-old girl and a 21-year-old girl, both of whom have been separated from their parents for 3 years, there are 2 off-duty Chicago cops out front.
Doing security.
Right, doing his security. And the man who is about to hear the Van Dyke Lacan McDonald is Judge Vincent Gaughn, who is a son of a bitch who is beyond corrupt. He heard the R. Kelly trial. It took 6.5 years for that to go to trial. From his indictment, it was the longest, set a record in Cook County, the longest period between indictment and trial. And during those 6.5 years, every 6 weeks, he'd hold a status conference and immediately retire to closed chambers. Everything that happened for 6.5 years remains off the record. The Sun-Times, the Tribune, and BEZ Public Radio sued to get those transcripts unsealed, and we lost. And he compelled me to take the stand because I got the videotape. I had to cite the Fifth Amendment like a fucking mobster so as not to reveal my sources. He did the same thing in the McDonald trial to the journalist who got the shooting, the videotape of McDonald. Doing the same thing with the sealed hearings. He's 80 years old, and I mean, it's Chicago. Nobody, you know, what he did in those sealed hearings was rule out any evidence of Aaliyah, of the 6 civil lawsuits, of a pattern of predatory behavior. He reduced everything to one videotape. I love this city, heart and soul. Right? I grew up across the river from Manhattan, and I've lived here since 1990, and I'd never live anywhere else. But my God, it's shit like that that just make me sick. And BEZ and the Tribune have a podcast now about the McDonald trial that goes deep into all these issues. And whichever way it turns out, get yourself informed.
Yeah.
Really done good work on that.